Welcome to Global One Media Stocks to Watch. I'm Michael Suido. I'm speaking today with Elmer Stewart. He knows the mining and exploration industry inside and out. He has more than 45 years of experience in the sector, and he's the head of Copper Fox Metals. They're a Canadian company with a market valuation of approximately 140 million Canadian dollars. Elmer, welcome to the show. Great to see you.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Copper is a hot commodity. Regular viewers have heard me say this before. It's used in electric vehicles, solar panels, wind turbines, and well, just about anything digital or electric. Now, your company, Copper Fox Metals, has 5 copper projects. They're in the Canadian province of British Columbia and the U.S. state of Arizona. 3 of these projects are in the exploration stage, 2 are more advanced. So I want to begin by zooming in on one of the projects. It's in the northwest of British Columbia. It's called Schaft Creek. During the first quarter of the year, you conducted an extensive field program there. So Elmer, set the scene for us. What excites you about Schaft Creek?
The Schaft Creek is a joint venture between Teck Resources Limited, and they have 75% interest, and they are the operator. Copper Fox owns a 25% interest in the project. The Schaft Creek project covers the Schaft Creek deposit, and that's one of the largest undeveloped porphyry copper systems in North America. It's a 4-metal system where it has primarily copper, but it also has very significant concentrations of gold, molybdenum, and silver, which in the industry we call byproduct credits. What excites me about it is the fact that it's an advanced stage project. We did a PEA in 2021, come up with an after-tax discounted value of $842 million US at discounted at 8%. So clearly there's some significant value there as well. But since the date of that 2021 PEA, the joint venture has been working at surfacing additional values, which was the context of the 2021 and the 2022 and the 2023 drilling. The purpose to do that is to take the project out of the preliminary economic assessment stage to the preliminary feasibility stage. And that is typically the second stage before you get to a feasibility study, which is typically the final stage in assessing a project before you would make a decision to sanction it. The plan after the 2024 season, and right now Teck has spent approximately $47 million on the project to the end of 2023. They plan to spend approximately another $19 million in 2024. And on completion of that work, hopefully toward the end of 2024 or very early 2025, we're going to be able to transition the project into the pre-feasibility stage. And typically when projects in the industry get that far along the evaluation stage, you can feel fairly comfortable that the project has got some very, very good legs underneath it.
All right, good legs underneath it. Like to hear that. As you mentioned, it's home to one of the largest undeveloped copper deposits in North America. And the joint venture you mentioned, it's planning to spend 19 million Canadian dollars this year, I believe, to advance the project. How are you all spending that money?
The good news about the joint venture we negotiated with Teck is that Teck is responsible to provide all the project funding. And essentially, if you drill it down, we have on our website a detailed slide showing the breakdown of the joint venture agreement. There are some milestone payments in that coming to Copper Fox, but essentially if you drill it all down, Teck is required or responsible for putting up all the funding should Copper Fox request they do so. Of course, Copper Fox being a junior company, we don't have that kind of capital, but by the mechanism of the joint venture, we could request Teck do that on our behalf. They would put those funds up, and then clearly the way the joint venture works is Teck has the ability to recover 90% of the capital costs out of the free cash flow. And so then the other 10% is split 25% by Copper Fox and 75% by Teck. And if I give you an example, say if you have $500 million of free cash flow, just to pick a number, 450 million of that would go to pay down your capital costs, and the other 50 would be split 75-25 by Copper Fox and by Teck. And that allows both companies in the joint venture to get cash flow out of the project even in the first year.
Elmer, let me just jump in here. What I want to ask you really is, what are the next steps at the Schaft Creek project? What are you all doing to advance that and bring it closer to fruition?
The next steps right now is we're actually working on finishing up the 2023 work that was done. one of those things is metallurgical test work to improve the metal recoveries and see how, if we can optimize the grinding or the comminution grinding tailings process. The other thing was we're completing a study on the geotechnical studies on the to determine if we can have to maintain the current pit slope design and the strip ratio is 1-to-1, or can we steepen it up on an overall angles to reduce the strip ratio to below 1-to-1. That's the work that's going on right now, and that's a result of the 2023 work that was done by Teck at the project. This year, we're going back, we're going to do some more geotechnical drilling. We're going to do some more drilling in the pit slope to determine a little bit more information in a certain part of the pit, probably toward the north, which we call the Paramount Zone, and then we're going to do some more work toward the south. The other part of it is going to be the ongoing environmental studies, the baseline studies, the hydrogeological monitoring, the wildlife, all the requirements we need to move the project toward a permitting stage, or what we call environmental assessment stage here in Canada, should that decision to be made. And at the same time, a lot of community engagement with the First Nations and the other stakeholders in and around the Schaft Creek area. The other initiatives are going to be simply, we're going to reassess the access route into Schaft Creek, because the access road has to be built, power line has to be good. Now, the good news about the power line, it comes from very, very clean hydroelectric power, so that's excellent. And so, yeah, we're just trying to get a little bit more certainty on all those phases of the project, which have a direct impact on the final valuation of the project.
Wow, it sounds like really busy times up there, definitely. Fantastic. Let's travel south now to Gila County, Arizona. It's a few hours east of Phoenix, and you have a big project there called Van Dyke. It's actually a historical site, and you've been looking at old drill holes to collect new data. In particular, as I understand it, you want to implement something called in situ copper recovery, which means there are no open pit mines. The rock stays in place, which is safer, and it's also better for the environment. Now, a few years ago, you conducted a preliminary economic assessment, and you calculated an internal rate of return for Van Dyke of more than 40%. I'm wondering, based on what you know now, do you think you can do even better than that?
The Van Dyke project is quite new when it comes to a source of copper, or they say it's relatively new. The way they're tackling these types of deposits, and they're basically called oxidized copper deposits. And the one that's most advanced in Arizona right now is Florence's TSXV deposit, the Florence deposit at TSXV. They're actually in construction. I think they did a phenomenal job of building this thing out. So we were lucky. We came in after they were there, and we were able to follow a lot of the things that they had already established. But yeah, Van Dyke is quite exciting. It's been around for a long time. It's been mined underground. It has been mined or processed twice from in situ recovery in 1970, believe it or not, 1979, late 1980s, and it's sat dormant since then. So we acquired the project for and we've been advancing it. And the idea is, what we're trying to do now is we're trying to remove the fatal flaws, but we've been able to expand the size of the deposit. We've done 2 resource estimates on it already. We've done 2 preliminary economic assessments on it. The latter one you've referred to. And so we see 3 opportunities. One, and first and foremost, is metal pricing. And I know we don't have much control on that, but we did the base case at Van Dyke was done at $3.15 a pound copper. Right now, the long-term copper price is $3.90. But what we did show in the economics was, the economic sensitivity was that if the price of copper goes up by 25 cents a pound, it really substantially increases the EBITDA, and it also very much advances the after-tax discounted valuation. Because all the values, most of the values we talk about in our presentation will be after-tax discounted values. And I believe it drives the after-tax valuation by like an additional $90 million. And that's based on a 25-cent increase. So if I was to take it from $3.15 to $3.90, which is today's current long-term metal prices, I'm adding an additional $270 million to the after-tax valuation of Van Dyke. After you get north of 40%, it really doesn't matter much what the internal rate of return is. The second way we think that we're going to be able to do that is, clearly we're going to be looking at optimizing the process. Now that will probably have a minimal impact. And the third is more akin to the future of the project. We have identified a very large area south of the deposit, which we know is not closed off. It's open to the southwest. And there's an area there, we call it the exploration target, probably the same size as the deposit is itself in the way we've looked at it right now. With exploration success, if that's explored, you can have the optionality of either increasing your mine life, taking it from 17 years out to whatever number of years it works out to be, or you can increase your annualized production from 85 million pounds of copper a year. Maybe you want to take it to 100 million pounds, or actually, you could actually probably do both depending on the size of the mine life you're looking to have going out into the future.
So copper prices are rising. You're taking an old site that hasn't been worked on for a while and essentially finding new minerals there, modernizing it, and you're doing it in an environmentally friendly way. That's what I'm hearing, right?
That's exactly what we're doing, and that's exactly what we did. Because what we liked about the project when we first looked at it, when we were doing our due diligence, there were 74 drill holes that were drilled, and the condition of the core, the way the data was collected, gave us a lot of comfort that the data was there. But more importantly, all the cores were available to us. None of them were destroyed. All the sample pumps were available to us. So we were able to actually go back in and recreate today a lot of the data by reanalyzing using more available, more sophisticated analytical techniques. And so we took that and we built it out. And interestingly enough, I mean, we've done all this for a grand total of probably, and then we obviously had to do some confirmation drilling to get the independent engineering firms on side with what we did. We did updated metallurgical test work, including the work that was done in 1979 and 1988, where they were actually producing copper from the project using in situ recovery methodologies. That was pretty archaic technology at the time. I think the technology now is far superior. So we have spent approximately $14 million Canadian from the time we bought this project to where we got it right now. And people look at it and say, well, how could you do that? Well, the idea in the industry, or at least the way we approach it, is we look at the data, we look at what we have left available to us, and we will not conduct a program until we see the need to do so. Now, there's no doubt, I think the next phase of Van Dyke is going to be a drilling program. It's probably going to be an 8 to 10 drill hole program. And in fact, I can tell you we're working on that right now. We haven't announced the final details, but the thing is we're working on that, and we hope to be able to announce the next phase of the program very shortly.
So it's data-driven. We've talked about your two most advanced projects. I want to briefly talk about your three early-stage ones. These are actually located close to Schaft Creek and Van Dyke. Wondering, why did you add these to your portfolio? What's the strategy?
I became involved in the company in 2009. We had one project, and that was the Schaft Creek project. I personally don't like working with companies that have one project. Something goes wrong, identify a fatal flaw, then you got to start all over again. The board empowered me to build a strategy where we would diversify our portfolio. And our strategy is to have advanced stage projects and exploration stage projects. Typically advanced stage, advanced exploration stage, then exploration stage. And we built that portfolio. We think it's a very high quality portfolio of properties, covering all three of those phases. The other thing we wanted to do is, because of my international experience, I wanted to stay in geopolitically stable areas. So we already had a presence in BC. I knew quite a bit about the Arizona porphyry system. So the opportunity to buy Van Dyke and Sombrero Butte came along in 2012. We closed those in 2013. What we liked about Van Dyke, which we just talked about, there was a lot of data, and that was an easy decision. Sombrero sort of came along as a piece of the package. But what we liked about the Sombrero Butte project was its location. So to get back to your question, to fill out our strategy to build a sustainable business model, we needed projects at the low end, which we could advance through exploration and take them up into the advanced stage project. Why did we like them? We were very selective in what we did. And the idea is simply that we look for projects that are porphyry nature because they're the largest source of metals and they typically have a lot of byproduct commodities like they'll either have gold or molybdenum or silver. They're near surface. They have very large, we've been able to develop very, very large footprints. And so footprints, in the way we look at it, the porphyry footprint is a proxy for the potential size of the deposit. Because the intermediate producers and the big producers, they want large deposits, preferably close to surface, which these three projects are. And so the idea is that we can advance or increase the size of the resource base at Eaglehead because we published a resource statement there last year, or we could have significant potential for an exploration discovery in Arizona on our Mineral Mountain project or our Sombrero Butte project.
Let's take a step back now, and thank you for sharing that. I want to look at the market for copper. We've been talking about how prices have been rising. They're actually up about 15% since the beginning of the year. You've been through a number of boom and bust, I'm sure, with the commodity market cycles over time. So I'm curious, are you expecting copper prices to rise further from here?
Yes, I do. And primarily that's based on two pretty basic fundamentals. One is I'm seeing the expected increase in demand due to the transition to a more electrified green economy. If that even comes to fruition to 50% of what some of the expectations are there, is going to put a big demand on the copper industry. And the other thing is traditionally copper consumption has grown approximately 2 to 2.5% year over year, I think, for the last 40 years. So at current prices to consumption today, it's approximately 25 million tons of copper. So at a 2% growth, you need to add another 500,000 tons of new copper. To give you an example of what that means, it's about a project the size of Cobre Panama, which is now shut in. It was doing 320,000 tons. So you got to do about 1.5 Cobre Panamas a year just to meet the normal demand, not including the demand from electrification. So with that excess demand, so you need two of those. The interesting thing is that, and here's where the structural problems come into the copper space. The head grades of the producing centers are declining, and they have been for the last few years. In fact, they've declined quite significantly. That affects annualized production. The second is the industry's been spending billions of dollars in exploration, and they're finding fewer and fewer large porphyry copper deposits to fill in that replacement to fill up a pipeline. The third thing is the regulatory time it takes to obtain the permission and social license to gain the permission to put the project into production. And that's assuming it gets through the feasibility stage and it has the economics are saturated to get a sanctioning process. So essentially, that's the structural aspect. And there's a few other things out there as well. But the idea is, I think what's happening, if the half of the expected demand just comes to fruition, you're going to see the industry doesn't have the capacity as it exists today to meet that demand of a very critical metal that is actually interwoven throughout our complete society. I know they use it for infrastructure, they're using it biomedical, using communications, electrification, vehicles, all this, and that's all great. But it just gives you an idea how many uses there are for copper. So I think with those things come to fruition and where the current capacity of the industry is, it has to mean that there's going to be a bigger demand for copper and a bigger demand for copper with an industry that's its capability to provide that is becoming more limited. It's got to be good for copper prices in the future going ahead.
Let's take a look at the investment side of the equation now. Copper Fox Metals share price has enjoyed a nice rally over the past month, up about 40%. However, your stock is still down some 20% as compared with its 52-week high, which was set not quite a year ago. So tell us, why should investors take a fresh look at your company? Why is it a stock to watch?
Copper Fox is actually involved in what we classify as a very unique group of companies in the junior space. And the reason why we're in that group is, and what we've done, we've been very successful in the exploration activities. And this is an industry that doesn't move very fast. But the thing is, it's always measured on success. So essentially what we've done, we built out a great portfolio of projects, good potential on them all. It meets our business model as we push it down the road. The thing is, I mean, since we came involved we've actually built out an inventory of about 7.2 billion pounds of copper equivalent. And that also includes a considerable amount of gold, molybdenum, and silver in it. The other thing is the insiders have accumulated 60% of the shares since we got involved in 2009. And, they're all in very geopolitically stable areas, and which means you probably will not have issues that you have in certain foreign jurisdictions. So essentially, it's a tightly held company. It's got 3 projects out of 5. We have resources on them. We've got a very good resource base, which is on Copper Fox's metal balance. And we've got a very, very high quality portfolio of projects and every bit of work we've done on each one of those projects has successfully advanced the project. Now, I'm not saying we're going to be successful through it all. The odds are against you being that successful, but it just goes to how careful you are and how experienced you are in the business to know exactly what type of deposit you look for. And we have a lot of expertise in that for a junior company. And, it's patience, a lot of experience, and just making sure you take very slow, sure steps to be successful and create value.
Well, the world needs copper more now than ever as we transition to green economies. We're talking about that. So it's really particularly interesting to learn about how your company is taking those steps to help meet this demand. Elmer, thank you so much for joining us today.
That's been a pleasure for me being here. Good to meet you as well.
We've been speaking with Copper Fox Metals Chairman and CEO Elmer Stewart, and you've been watching Global and Media Stocks to Watch. I'm Michael Suedo.